Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is on his way to Malaysia to meet with his Chinese Communist Party counterpart in advance of Trump having his first face-to-face in his second term with President Xi in South Korea later. So Bessent is there to set the table in response to the export controls that the Chinese communists put on rare earths. Now, Trump made a nice pivot earlier this week in agreeing in principle to a deal with the Australians to provide some of those rare earths that we need in the interim. But the question is, where do things go from here? Trump had this to say when asked both about his forthcoming meeting with Xi and his not forthcoming meeting with Putin.
War is this, and all the bloodshed ended.
And as you know, we are going to be making a big trip next week. Some of you are going with us. We'll be going to Malaysia, South Korea, and Japan. In South Korea, I'll be meeting with President Xi of China. We'll have a pretty long meeting scheduled. We can work out a lot of our questions and our doubts and our tremendous assets together. So we look forward to that. I think something will work out. We have a very good relationship. But that'll be a big one. We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future.
And, of course, sanctions were imposed, perhaps the most aggressive sanctions yet imposed on Russian industry, energy sector, after that meeting was canceled, per Trump's belief that Putin wasn't ready to be serious. So what will come if Xi isn't ready to be serious? For more on that, please be joined by Lee Smith, best-selling author of The Permanent Coup and The Plot Against the President, what I just described as the subject of his new book, The China Matrix, the epic story of how Donald Trump shattered a deadly pact. Lee Smith, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan, good morning. Thank you for bringing me on. I appreciate it.
So the sort of the what comes next, and maybe past this prologue, talking about the deadly pact that he shattered and what that tells us in terms of informing our understanding of what Trump might do here with this impasse over export controls on rare earths.
Right. What Donald Trump wants, as I describe in the China Matrix, and that he went through this during his first term, Donald Trump wants to rewrite the rules of the relationship with China. Which includes preventing China from manipulating its currency, stealing American IP, forcing transfers of American tech. And that didn't happen in the first term, and I think it's unlikely that's going to happen in the second term as well. So I think Donald Trump is looking past that. And I think it's important to look at what Donald Trump's tariff regime means. I think that this is it's meant to put – it's not just meant to design to even the score, even the trade imbalance that is worth many trillions of dollars at this point. But it's also meant to punish the CCP. It's meant to put the United States in a stronger position. It's meant to hurt Xi.
So, I mean, for those who think that, look, it's time to formally decouple from China, I know that's a phrase that Scott Bessent does not like to hear, and he bristles at it. But it sounds like that effectively is Trump's position over time, that will present as interested in collaboration and a mutually beneficial relationship. But what we're really trying to do is minimize China's influence.
Yes, we have to minimize our exposure. I heard you in the introduction calling it the Chinese Communist Party, and that's exactly right. It's often forgotten that this is a communist government. They exploit the wealth of others, and with China, it's been our wealth. And this has been going on since the start of the relationship in 1972. And, of course, it really picked up with China's accession to the World Trade Organization in 2001. And look, it's righteous and important that the Treasury Secretary says, we're not talking about a formal decoupling from China because no one wants to rattle the markets, right? No one wants to get people upset, but that's exactly what has to happen. We saw what happened during COVID, and people were alarmed to see that we relied on pharmaceuticals made in China. That which puts us in a very dangerous position, and that's just one of many strategic industries that the Chinese have conquered. So yeah, we need to absolutely minimize, if not eliminate, eventually, if not during the remainder of Trump's term, but eliminate wholly our exposure to China.
I mean, people forget this, but of course, Trump was talking about the threat that the Chinese Communist Party posed back in the 1980s. And it doesn't seem like his posture has changed much. People are still confused about his complimentary rhetoric. I have a great relationship with Xi and this and that, but that's just the way he sort of butters people up to try to get what he wants, I think. So the question always is, what does he actually want? And I think you're bringing that into focus. And I wonder how impactful on Trump's motivation here was the dishonesty and destruction that China inflicted on America and the world vis-a-vis COVID.
Very important. Look, Donald Trump, as I explain in my book, there's an extensive interview with the president in the China Matrix, which goes between chapter 1 and the epilogue. And it's a very important interview. And in that interview, you understand the reasons why Donald Trump distrusts Xi Jinping. And at the top of that list, Dan, is COVID. He has a quote saying, I liked and respected Xi very much until the China virus. So that's one issue. There are two other issues, though, as well. The second issue is that Donald Trump wanted a comprehensive trade deal with the Chinese, which would allow American companies into China. We have a very hard time getting American companies into China, despite what different policymakers and corporate leaders say. That would also have meant no more manipulation of the renminbi, no more stealing American IP, no more tech transfers, and many, many other things. Right? Trump thought that he had this deal, and Xi backed out. So that's another reason that Trump doesn't trust Xi. The third reason is that the deal that they eventually did, a much smaller deal known as the Phase 1 trade deal, the Chinese never fulfilled their obligations, including purchases of American agricultural goods. So going into this meeting with Xi and before, Donald Trump is looking at a man who has crossed him several times. Donald, as a negotiator, as someone who's been doing business across the world for a long time, you can bet that this is on Donald Trump's mind. He's not going in there with a blank slate or expecting to be fooled like a regular Washington swamp creature. This is a guy who does business and has a long memory, and he's going to be looking at a man who he does not trust.
So with the point of this face-to-face, which ultimately has to happen for, appearance's sake at least, is maybe just appearance's sake. Maybe that's the least and the most, and this is all just to, as you said, calm the markets, suggest that these are two guys who can work together. There's no decoupling going on. There's nothing that is going to be radical or disruptive of global supply chains and so on and so forth. It's just give the appearance so that we can methodically execute our program the same way that Xi has been giving an appearance as they try to methodically execute theirs. And this is not mutually beneficial. This is predatory in both directions.
Absolutely right. Donald Trump has to show up because the strong horse has to be there, and he has to look the other guys in the eyes and has to say, "I know what you're doing." But do you know why Xi went nuclear with the rare earths? It's astonishing, and of course, this has not been widely reported in the Times and the Post and other places. What happened is that the U.S. found out that the Chinese had been buying American technology, transferring it to the Islamic Republic of Iran, which passed it on to their terror proxies, like Hamas. Hamas was using in their October 7th attack, 2023, this horrible massacre, we're leaving over 1,200 people dead. They were using American technology in their drones. We found out about that, and we put all of these different Chinese companies that had been fronting for the Iranians and the terror proxies on the entity list. Right. So for protecting American national security, Xi and the Chinese went nuclear on rare earths. So, yes, Donald Trump has to be in the same room as Xi, and he has to look him in the face to effectively say, you're darn right, I'm going to protect American national security. And if you want to pull this, we have a lot more that we can do to you as well. And, you know, the president has said that, but you have to be in the same room with the guy so the guy knows what's going on, so the guy knows you're serious. I'm quite certain that Xi Jinping knows that Donald Trump is a serious man, and obliterating the Iranian nuclear program has only further confirmed that fact.
You know, there's always this question about how much of a paper tiger is the Chinese Communist Party in terms of their economic wherewithal. You know, is this just a bigger, more complicated version of the Soviet Union that will suffer the same fate ultimately? And I want to read you a passage from the Financial Times and see if you agree with this. Really interesting piece. Xi's trillion-yuan industrial blitz turned China into the factory of the future. EVs, chips, quantum, AI, pick your acronym, they lead it. Yet the economy's engine stalled. Total factor productivity is flatlined. For every BYD, that's state-sponsored conglomerate, there are a dozen zombie firms sucking subsidies. The state funds tech titans and their failures like Silicon Valley without the exits. Industrial policy worked too well. Every province builds the same factories, hoards the same talent, protects the same losers. It's innovation by committee. Impressive, unprofitable, unstoppable. The paradox is that China can manufacture progress but not efficiency. Tech grows but output doesn't. Power shifts, value fades. Xi's empire can mint billionaires and breakthroughs, just not productivity.
Dan, I'll go back to the way that you started talking about the Chinese Communist Party. This is a communist regime. It extracts the wealth of others. Without the United States, and this is why Donald Trump is focusing on tariffs, to even out the trade imbalance. Without China's trade surplus with us, they're nothing. You're talking about these zombie firms. A lot of these zombie firms have come and they've listed on U.S. capital markets, and they've totally ripped off U.S. investors. It's we, because American elites have let it happen. Donald Trump is the first guy to say no more. This is ridiculous. Between the trade deficit we run with them, which averages something like at least $300 billion a year. Last year it was $295 billion. And the number of Chinese companies that list on U.S. capital markets, we're the one that's floating them. So no, it's not like the Soviet Union in that one way. We never floated the Soviet Union. We never made China rich. We didn't build the China. We didn't make the Soviets rich. We didn't build the Soviet military. That's what we've done with China. Everything they have, they've taken from us, and they're pretty good imitators, right? The stuff that they've stolen, they've made pretty good copies. But yeah, this is not a place of innovation. They've sucked the lifeblood of innovation and invention from the United States, and no one's watched out for us. It's astonishing. It's an astonishing story that's been going on for 50 years, and really no one did anything until Trump.
Lee Smith is the best-selling author of The Permanent Coup and The Plot Against the President. His new book, as we have been discussing, very timely given President Trump's upcoming meeting with Xi, The China Matrix, that's the name of the book, The China Matrix, the epic story of how Donald Trump shattered a deadly pact. Lee Smith, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it.
And Lee Smith joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. On AM 560. The Answer.
If you're one of the millions of Americans behind on your taxes, if you're afraid to open your mail because IRS collection letters could be coming, listen carefully. The IRS is cracking down, taking paychecks, freezing bank accounts, revoking passports. That's a fact. But here's what most people don't know. There are official tax relief programs designed to help struggling taxpayers. Programs that could save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief. Optima's award-winning team will fight to protect your paycheck, your passport, and your property. Their tax attorneys and licensed tax professionals will work tirelessly to get you the best deal possible with the IRS. Every day, penalties and interest keep piling up, so don't wait. Call Optima now for a free consultation.
Call 800-965-1433. 800-965-1433. 800-965-1433.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
These days, people who are in pain are taking control of their health and looking beyond traditional medicine.